For more on last night's interview, again, if you can call it that, Tim Murtaugh joins us. He's a senior advisor to the Trump 2024 campaign and joins us on the phone. Hello, Tim.
Hey, Vince. How you doing?
I'm doing all right, and I'm analyzing the 18 minutes of footage we have from Kamala Harris last night. What did you find intriguing from it all?
Well, that answer right there is just unbelievable. There you have. This is what she cannot be allowed to get away with, and I think we're going to try to hold her to this. She cannot run as an outsider when she is the incumbent vice president of the United States. She just can't be allowed to do that. And so it's really pretty great to hear her. And we have a TV ad on the air right now in a lot of the battleground states that kind of tracks this. It's wonderful to hear her talk about how bad inflation is and how expensive the cost of living is for regular Americans, because it's as though she hasn't been in office for 3.5 years. And when we remind people that these are actually her policies. You know, it's the Biden-Harris administration. They branded it that way from the very first day. Her name is on the door. She's responsible for all these things. And she turns to this ridiculous price gouging thing, which the Washington Post, they had a headline in the column that said, when your opponent is calling you a communist, maybe don't propose price controls.
Right.
She turns to that. The margin of profit in a grocery store is like 1%. Grocery stores don't gouge people. It's the inflation that's doing it. And she wants us to turn the keys back over to the same person who set the thing on fire in the first place. She's crazy. So it's the Trump campaign's job to point all that stuff out.
Right. And Kamala Harris, unlike a lot of vice presidents, was way more instrumental in advancing that inflation. She cast more tie-breaking votes than any vice president in American history, in particular for the very spending bills that you and I are talking about. She had her hands involved in that decision.
Yeah, and this follows the same track that leftists always do when they get the power of government and they get at the controls. They try to enact these quasi-socialist and in some cases full-on socialist programs, and when they inevitably fail, the only conclusion they draw from that is that they didn't do it enough. Right. So the next thing is, let's go back in and dump more money down into the machine down there, and let's see what happens the second time. And we know what happens. It drives inflation through the roof. And that is precisely what she's going to do. She's going to try to find people to accuse of being guilty of contributed to inflation when she should be actually looking within. And these tie-breaking votes that she cast, I mean, it really set this country on the path towards the inflation that everybody's suffering. And another thing that people point out would, like, say, they're saying, oh, look at the inflation is coming down now, but the prices haven't. It's like it's a good analogy to say, if I gain 20 pounds 1 year, and then the following year I gained 10 pounds, and then the third year I only gained 3 pounds. Well, my rate of increase is really slowed down, but I've still gained 33 pounds if I'm keeping track of the math right. You know, so it's none of her excuses work.
Yes, we're still barreling forward, and prices are still going up. All right, so let me move to a different issue. The Biden-Harris administration over the past 3.5 years has not been shy about kicking open America's borders and importing foreign nationals by the millions. Kamala Harris was asked about this, not in that way, but was asked about this last night. Take a listen.
Another issue, big one, is immigration. As Vice President, you were tasked with addressing the root causes of migration in southern countries and
northern part of Central America.
The northern part of Central America that affects the southern border of the U.S. During the Biden-Harris administration, there were record numbers of illegal border crossings. Why did the Biden-Harris administration wait 3.5 years to implement sweeping asylum restrictions?
Oh, how generous.
Well, first of all, the root causes work that I did as vice president, that I was asked to do by the president, has actually resulted in a number of benefits, including historic investments by American businesses in that region.
Oh, thank God.
The number of immigrants coming from that region has actually reduced since we began that work. But I will say this, that Joe Biden and I and our administration worked with members of the United States Congress on an immigration issue that is very significant to the American people and to our security, which is the border. And through bipartisan work, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Congress, a bill was crafted, which we supported, which I support. And Donald Trump got word of this bill that would have contributed to securing our border. And because he believes that it would not have helped him politically, he told his folks in Congress don't put it forward. He killed the bill.
All right. Tim Murtaugh, would you pull the meat out of that word salad? What do you make of it?
Well, that bill was a garbage bill. That was primarily a Ukraine funding bill. It was not a border security bill, and the bill was rightly killed. She spent a week when she became the presumed nominee of the Democrats there. She spent a week running around, spending a lot of energy trying to convince everyone that she was never named the border czar. Right? Do you remember that little kerfuffle? Well,
Yeah.
The fact is that the two of them, Biden and Harris, ran in 2020 as a team that was going to, and they did it, the first administration in history that actually unsecured the American border with Mexico. That's exactly what they set out to do, and it's what they campaigned on, and it's what they've done. For 3 years, they told us that the border was secure, and then all of a sudden, when they were forced to admit that it's not secure because the images on television are just too much to ignore, when they were forced to admit that, guess what? They want to blame on good old Donald Trump because he's the guy that they can always pin stuff on when they don't want to take responsibility for their own actions. But that's exactly what they did. They destroyed any security with that was at the southern border to this country, and now they're looking for someone to blame only because it became a political problem for them,
Right.
Not because of the national security threat to the United States. It's because it was inconvenient for them politically.
Yeah, that's true. Although, I one of the things I object to about the way Dana Bash conducted that question was that she suggested that it was just a festering problem and they finally dealt with it after 3.5 years. Biden and Harris actively made it worse. The first thing Biden does when he comes into office is a number of gets rid of all these Trump executive orders, opens up the border, gives NGOs billions of dollars to traffic human beings into our country. The idea that they were just not really attending to it, that's not true. They were sabotaging it.
Yeah, they absolutely were. I mean, 92, I think, is the number. 92 Trump policies were repealed by the Biden administration, the Biden-Harris administration. They actively did it. And you hear her in that defense there when she's asked, hey, what have you guys been doing to actually address this problem that you created, is not what Dana says, but that's the actual truth. And her response is, well, we gave a bunch of money to these foreign countries. But we just got finished talking about how Americans are struggling. And her defense of her malfeasance on the border is to say we threw a bunch of money at these other countries. Boy, is that pathetic. You want to say that is really addressing the problem, boy, dumping money into somebody else's bank account and hoping that your backyard gets clean. That's amazing.
There was also another guy sitting in the room for most of this. It was a very bizarre interview, the whole thing. Tim Walz, the emotional support running mate, was sitting next to Kamala Harris throughout all of this. And he was asked at one point why it is that he lied about going into a war zone. And his response was that he's just not very good with grammar. Listen.
And my wife, the English teacher, told me my grammar is not always correct.
My grammar is not always correct. Tim, I know you've been involved in political communications for some time. Is this a good way to get out of a scandal? You just say you have bad grammar?
No. Look, this is the crime against politics and the crime against communications and strategy here. These people had 39 days to come up with better answers than this. That is nearly 6 weeks. And he comes out there and he says, my grammar is bad. And you're right. He wasn't, an emotional support Midwesterner. He should have been wearing a yellow vest to denote his status there. He's like basically a human body pillow that she can hug if she needed some emotional support. But, so that was a terrible answer. And also I gotta, before we get done here, the biggest gold nugget that came out of this thing, I absolutely believe, is when Kamala Harris, and she said it repeatedly, that her values haven't changed. When she was confronted with these outrageous 180-degree reversals of these policies that she has allegedly found new positions on, and her answer was, my values haven't changed, this is what she expects people to believe. Yes, for many years, I believed firmly and emphatically, in many cases, X. I now say I believe Y. But you also have to understand that nothing at all has changed. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. And so she might as well have stared into the camera at that point and said, the honest truth is you can't trust anything I say. It's just a fact. And it took them almost 6 weeks to come up with this.
Yeah, that's true.
No wonder. This is why she cratered in 2019. We're seeing it happen all over again. As soon as people get a load of her act, they think, man, she's really bad at this. And it's beginning to happen. Her peak in polling, her peak, her best days of the campaign have already occurred.
So the Trump campaign has a collection of some of her past positions, and so for her to say stuff like, "Oh, I'm for a wall now," or "I want to lower grocery prices," or "I'm for no tax on tips," this is just listen to the collection of quotes that the Trump campaign pulled together on her. Let's see here. Stand by. I promise I have it. Here's Kamala Harris through the years.
My values have not changed.
Reduce red meat specifically.
Yes.
The Boston Marathon bomber. They should be able to vote.
I think we should have that conversation.
Abolish ICE.
Yes.
Would you ban offshore drilling?
Yes, I'm in favor of banning fracking. I am prepared to pass a Green New Deal. I support a mandatory buyback program. We're not going to treat people who are undocumented cross the border as criminals. The idea that more police equals more safety, that's just wrong.
Policing, as we know, goes all the way back to slave patrols and that idea.
You are absolutely right.
Where do you stand on defund the police?
We need to take a look at these budgets.
Do you ban plastic straws?
I think we should.
70 to 80% tax rate.
I think that's fantastic.
Chip in now to the Minnesota Freedom Fund.
How dare we speak Merry Christmas?
Yeah, I am radical. I do believe that we need to get radical about what we are doing.
Kamala Harris failed week, dangerously liberal. It says at the end of the spot. So that's, I mean, and the record here is, I think, crystal clear. She's been consistent as a crazy person for years.
Yeah, she has. And that, I got to tell you, the reason why that thing that she says about my values haven't changed, the reason why that to us is very valuable to the Trump campaign is that it's the gateway. It opens the door to everything that is in her record. Here, these are the actual facts. She is a San Francisco liberal who is pretending not to be. She has never been the principal candidate in any election where she had to carry the banner herself outside of California. The only election she's ever run successfully outside of California, she wasn't the principal. When she was running on her own in 2019, she flamed out and had to quit before Iowa. So she has all these long-standing, radical leftist positions and actions and decisions that she's made for years, and they are not compatible with the majority of Americans. And so they have to change her. But then when she comes out with these brand new, like they basically invented a whole new person with whole new opinions about everything. But when they're trying to present this brand new edition of Kamala Harris, she says in order to assuage the left, she has a problem on the left. She needs to calm them down. Don't worry, I'm still one of you. She says, my values haven't changed. Well, all right, if that's the case, then everything that she ever did when she was back in California, when she was a local DA, she just brought those all up into present tense. All those things are absolutely valid. If nothing has changed, then boop, all of it is fair game. Don't talk about how that was a long time ago.
Yeah, Tim Murtaugh, senior advisor to the Trump 2024 campaign. Thank you, sir, for all of that. Really good to talk to you as always.